The first time my parents sent me away for the summer, I was 8 years old. I didn't understand that I was being left behind. I thought I was going on vacation too. That was the part that hurt the most. It was a warm Saturday morning in June, and our little suburban house smelled like sunscreen, coffee, and the pancakes my mother had made for breakfast. My father was loading bags into the trunk of our SUV. My younger brother, Ethan, was running around the driveway wearing a brand new baseball cap. I stood in the hallway watching them. "Where are we going?" I asked. My father froze for half a second. Then he smiled. "We're taking Ethan to Florida." My face lit up. Really? I had never been to Florida. I had never seen the ocean. I had only seen beaches in movies and pictures. "I want to go." My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at me. Then she gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sweetheart, you're going to Aunt Claire's." I blinked. "For how long?" "Most of the summer." My excitement disappeared. "But why?" My mother walked over and hugged me. "You'll have fun." "I want to go to Florida." "I know. Can I come?" She pulled away from me. "It just isn't going to work this time." I looked at my father. "Why?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's complicated." I looked toward Ethan. "Is he going?" "Of course," Ethan said proudly. "We're staying near the beach." I turned back to my parents. "Why can't I stay near the beach too?" Nobody answered. My mother had already packed my suitcase. It was the little blue one with the broken zipper that I had used for sleepovers. She had packed 6 weeks of clothes. 6 weeks. I stared at it. "You packed all my clothes?" "You'll be at Aunt Claire's until school starts." My throat tightened. "Why?" My mother sighed. "Because Aunt Claire loves having you." That wasn't an answer. But I was 8. I didn't know how to argue with adults. So I picked up my stuffed rabbit and walked outside. A few minutes later, I was sitting in the back seat of my aunt's old sedan. Through the window, I watched my parents drive away in the opposite direction. Toward Florida. Toward the ocean. Toward the vacation I thought I was supposed to be part of. I pressed my forehead against the glass. Aunt Claire noticed. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I nodded. Yeah. It was my first lie about being okay. It wouldn't be my last. Aunt Claire lived in a quiet neighborhood in Ohio. Her house was small but comfortable. There were flowers along the walkway and tomato plants in the backyard. She had a golden retriever named Cooper who greeted me like I was the most important person in the world. That first night, Aunt Claire made spaghetti. She put extra cheese on mine. "You hungry?" "A little." "You want to talk?" "No." She didn't push. That was one of the things I would eventually love most about her. She knew when to speak. And she knew when silence was kinder. The next morning, she made pancakes. I sat at the kitchen table watching the syrup run down the stack. "Your mom said you love pancakes." "I do." "Well, then, we're going to have a lot of them this summer." I smiled. For a few minutes, I forgot about Florida. Then the phone rang. It was my mother. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hi. Are you having fun?" "Yes." "Good." I heard laughter in the background. "Is Ethan there?" "Yes." "What is he doing?" "He's swimming." "Can I talk to him?" My mother hesitated. "Sure." A few seconds later, Ethan picked up. "Hey." "Hey. It's awesome here." "What's it like?" "The ocean is huge." I closed my eyes. "Really?" "Yeah, we went swimming yesterday." "That sounds fun." "It is." Then he said something that made my heart hurt. "I wish you were here." I swallowed. "Me too." After we hung up, I went outside. Aunt Claire found me sitting on the porch steps. "You okay?" I nodded. But tears were already running down my face. She sat beside me. "You don't have to pretend with me." That was the first time I cried about it. Not because I hated Ethan. I didn't. I loved my brother. I was just beginning to understand that my parents were making a choice. And that choice wasn't me. When my parents returned, they brought Ethan souvenirs. A stuffed alligator. A t-shirt. A little plastic bucket filled with shells. They also brought me a keychain. It said, Florida. I stared at it. "Thanks." My mother hugged me. "Did you have a good summer?" "Yes." "What did you do?" I started listing things. I went to the library. Aunt Claire taught me how to bake cookies. We went hiking. I saw a deer. My mother smiled. That sounds wonderful. I looked at Ethan. He was showing Dad his pictures. Hundreds of them. Ethan on the beach. Ethan at the hotel. Ethan eating ice cream. Ethan standing beside a giant aquarium. I stood quietly beside them. Nobody asked why there were no pictures of me. The following summer, I hoped things would be different. They weren't. When June came, my mother once again brought out the blue suitcase. I stared at it. Where are we going? My mother didn't look up. You're going to Aunt Claire's. My stomach sank. Again? Just for a few weeks. What about the vacation? We're taking Ethan to California. I stared at her. Why? Because he really wants to go. I want to go too. You've been to Aunt Claire's before. I didn't understand the logic. That doesn't mean I don't want to go. My father entered the room. Don't make this difficult. I looked at him. I just want to come. He sighed. It's not always about you. I didn't know what to say. Because I wasn't asking for everything. I was asking for one thing. To be included. That summer, Aunt Claire took me to a small county fair. She bought me cotton candy. We rode the Ferris wheel. From the top, I could see the entire town. Look, she said. I looked down. I can see your house. She smiled. And now you can see how big the world is. I didn't realize it then, but Aunt Claire was teaching me something. The world was bigger than my parents' choices. Every summer after that followed the same pattern. At 11, they took Ethan to New York. At 12, they went to Disney World. At 13, they took him skiing in Colorado. At 14, they visited California again. At 15, Ethan went on a cruise. At 16, he went to Hawaii. Each year, I became better at pretending it didn't hurt. I stopped asking questions. I stopped waiting at the window. I stopped looking at vacation photographs. I stopped telling my parents when I was excited about things. Instead, I told Aunt Claire. And Aunt Claire listened. When I got my first school photography award, she framed the certificate. When I made the honor roll, she took me out for dinner. When I got my driver's license, she was the first person to let me drive her car. When I turned 17, she gave me a used camera. It wasn't fancy. The lens had a tiny scratch. But to me, it was priceless. What am I supposed to do with it? I asked. Take pictures. Of what? Whatever you don't want to forget. That sentence changed my life. I started photographing everything. Aunt Claire drinking coffee in the morning. Cooper sleeping under the kitchen table. Sunlight coming through the curtains. A little boy feeding ducks at the park. An elderly couple holding hands. A mother tying her daughter's shoelaces. People together. People choosing each other. I became fascinated by ordinary love. Maybe because I had spent so much time wondering what it felt like. By the time I was 18, I had stopped believing my parents would ever change. That summer, I was preparing to leave for college. I had been accepted into a photography program. I was excited, terrified, and proud. One evening, my father walked into the kitchen. We're going to Hawaii this summer. I smiled. That's great. Ethan has a baseball tournament there. My smile disappeared. Oh, we thought we'd make a family vacation out of it. I waited. Then I asked, Are you asking me to come? My father looked uncomfortable. Actually, Claire said you could stay with her. I stared at him. Something inside me became completely still. I'm 18. I know. I've spent every summer at Aunt Claire since I was 8. I know. And you're still doing this? My father didn't answer. My mother entered the kitchen. What is going on? I looked at her. I'm not going to Aunt Claire's. She frowned. Then where are you going? College. Your semester doesn't start until August. I'll figure it out. Don't be ridiculous. I shook my head. No, I'm done. My mother crossed her arms. You're acting like we abandoned you. You did. Her face changed. We never abandoned you. You sent me away every summer. You loved staying with Claire. That doesn't mean I wanted you to leave without me. Silence. I continued. I wanted to see the ocean. My mother looked down. I wanted to ride on an airplane. My voice shook. I wanted family pictures. My father sat down. I wanted to know what it felt like to be chosen. My mother started crying. But I wasn't finished. You always told me I was independent. You always said I didn't need much. But I wasn't independent because I didn't need you. I wiped my tears. I became independent because I learned you weren't coming. Nobody spoke. Then my father said quietly, "We thought Ethan needed us more." I stared at him. "That's the truth?" He nodded. Ethan had more problems. He struggled in school. He needed attention? And I didn't? My mother whispered, "You seemed okay." I laughed through my tears. "Mom, I was 8. That sentence destroyed whatever defense they had left. Because there was no explanation for an 8-year-old being expected to understand why she wasn't invited. I didn't go to Hawaii. I moved into a small apartment near my college. It was tiny. The kitchen had 2 cabinets. The bedroom barely fit a bed. But for the first time, every decision was mine. I worked mornings at a coffee shop. I attended classes during the day. I edited photographs at night. Some nights I ate cereal for dinner. Some nights I couldn't afford anything except instant noodles. But I was happy. Because nobody was sending me away. I was building my own life. My photography improved. I entered competitions. I started photographing weddings. Then families. Then small businesses. One of my photographs was published in a regional magazine. Then another. Eventually, a travel company contacted me. They wanted me to photograph a campaign. I almost deleted the email because I thought it was spam. It wasn't. The assignment was in Hawaii. I read the message 3 times. Then I laughed. Hawaii, the place I had spent years imagining. The place my family had gone without me. Now I was being paid to photograph it. I booked my flight. When I arrived, I stood on the beach alone. The waves rolled toward me. The wind moved through my hair. I took off my shoes. For a moment, I felt like that 8-year-old girl again. Only this time, nobody was telling me I couldn't come. I walked into the ocean. The water reached my ankles. Then my knees. I started laughing. Not because anything was funny. Because I had finally arrived. I took out my camera. And I photographed the sunrise. The picture became one of the most successful images of my career. But I never sold the original. I kept it. I called it the place I finally chose myself. My career grew. I moved to Chicago. Then New York. I traveled across the country. I photographed weddings in California, families in Texas, graduations in Boston, small-town festivals in Vermont. I became known for something my clients loved. I could capture emotions. Not poses. Not perfect smiles. Real moments. A father wiping tears from his daughter's face. A grandmother holding her grandson. A mother watching her child walk across a stage. A husband reaching for his wife's hand. I understood those moments better than most people. Because I knew how precious they were. Then, one winter evening, my mother called. "Can we talk?" I was sitting at my desk. "Sure. We saw your photographs." "Thank you. They're beautiful." "Thanks." There was silence. Then she said, "We owe you an apology." I leaned back. "I know." "No?" Her voice cracked. "You don't understand." "We finally understand." She told me that my father had been looking through old vacation photographs. He found one from Florida. Ethan was standing on the beach. I wasn't there. My mother said they had both realized something. There were hundreds of pictures of Ethan, but almost none of me. Not because I wasn't doing anything, because they weren't there to see it. "We thought we were giving Ethan special experiences," she said. "And you were giving me the message that I wasn't worth those experiences." I didn't know what to say. "We were selfish," she whispered. I closed my eyes. "I wanted you to choose me." "I know. I waited for years." "I know. And eventually I stopped waiting." She cried. "I wish we could change it." "You can't." "I know." There was another silence. Then she said, "But we'd like to be part of your life now." I looked at the photograph on my wall. A father holding his daughter. I don't know how. Neither do we. For some reason, that honesty mattered. A few months later, I invited my parents to dinner. It wasn't a grand reunion. No dramatic music. No perfect apology. Just 4 people sitting around a table. Ethan came too. He was older now. Married. He had 2 children. During dinner, he looked at me. I need to say something. I nodded. I didn't understand what was happening when we were kids. I know. I thought you didn't want to come. I know. He looked down. If I'd understood, I would have asked them to take you. I smiled sadly. You were a kid too. I still feel guilty. Don't. He looked at me. You didn't make the decision. He nodded. Then he said, You know, I hated those vacations sometimes. I looked surprised. Why? Because you weren't there. That hurt in a completely different way. He continued. Mom and Dad kept saying you liked staying with Aunt Clare. I believed them. He smiled sadly. But every time I saw something cool, I wished you could see it. I reached across the table. You should have told me. I should have. We sat there quietly. For the first time, I realized something important. Sometimes families hurt each other without understanding the damage they're causing. And sometimes the people you blame are hurting too. That didn't erase what happened. But it helped me let go of some of the anger. A year later, my parents asked if they could visit my home. I agreed. They arrived on a Saturday morning. My mother brought flowers. My father brought a box. Inside were old photographs. He had spent months going through storage. I found these, he said. I looked through them. There were pictures of me as a baby, my first birthday, my first day of school, my 8th birthday, my 9th, my 10th. I started crying. I didn't know you had these. My father nodded. We always loved you. I looked at him. I know, but we didn't know how to show it. That was the real problem. Love isn't only what you feel. It's what the other person experiences. You can love someone deeply and still make them feel unwanted. And sometimes saying I loved you isn't enough. You have to learn how to love them better. Years later, I had children of my own. The first time I packed a suitcase for my daughter, I froze. She was 5. Her little pink backpack sat on the bed. She was going to spend the weekend with her grandparents. She jumped around the room. I'm going to Grandma's. I smiled. Then I suddenly remembered myself at 8 years old. The blue suitcase. The hallway. The driveway. My brother getting into the car. My parents driving toward Florida. I sat on the edge of my daughter's bed. She looked at me. Mommy, what's wrong? I smiled. Nothing. I hugged her. I'm just happy. She hugged me back. I realized something. I could give my children what I had always wanted. Not expensive vacations. Not perfect parents. Not a huge house. Just reassurance. Presence. Choice. So whenever we planned a family trip, I made sure everyone knew. We're going together. Sometimes that meant Disney. Sometimes it meant a road trip. Sometimes it meant camping in the backyard because money was tight. But we went together. And when my children got older, I never assumed that silence meant they were okay. I asked. I listened. I showed up. One summer, we took our first big family vacation to the beach. My daughter ran toward the water. My son chased her. My husband carried the cooler. I stood behind them with my camera. For a second, I saw my childhood flash before me. The little girl who had wanted to see the ocean. The little girl who had wondered why her brother was chosen. The little girl who had spent summers at Aunt Clare's. I raised my camera. My children turned toward me. Mom, take a picture. I smiled. I am. They stood together. The sun was setting behind them. The ocean glowed orange. And I took the photograph. Years later, that photograph would hang in our family room. But underneath it, I wrote a sentence. The best vacations aren't about where you go. They're about who chooses to go with you. Aunt Clare passed away when I was 34. She had been sick for several months. I stayed beside her as much as I could. On her last afternoon, she held my hand. Did I ever tell you how proud I am of you? I smiled through tears. Probably 1,000 times. She laughed softly. You were always worth choosing. Those words broke me. Because Aunt Clare had been the person who made me feel chosen when my own parents didn't know how. After she died, I went through her things. In a drawer, I found my old blue suitcase, the same one my mother had packed when I was 8. I sat on the floor and cried. Inside the suitcase were old postcards. Florida, California, Disney World, Hawaii, every summer, every place I had missed. But underneath them was something else. A photograph. It was me at 8 years old. I was sitting on Aunt Claire's porch, holding a glass of lemonade. I was smiling. On the back, Aunt Claire had written, "She doesn't know it yet, but this girl is going to be stronger than everyone who ever underestimated her." I held that photograph against my heart. For the first time, I understood. Those summers hadn't been empty. They had given me Aunt Claire. They had given me independence. They had given me photography. They had given me a reason to understand how powerful it is to simply show up for someone. But I still wish my parents had been there. Both things could be true. I could be grateful for who I became and still hurt over what I lost. Healing didn't mean pretending the past never happened. It meant refusing to let the past decide who I would become. My parents eventually became grandparents who showed up. They came to school plays. They attended soccer games. They took my children camping. They learned to ask questions. They learned to listen. They learned that being present mattered more than buying gifts. One evening, my mother sat beside me while my children played in the backyard. She looked at me. "Do you think you can ever forgive us completely?" I thought about it. "I already have." She started crying. "But I'll never forget." She nodded. "I understand. And that's okay." She smiled. "I suppose it is." I looked at my children. Because forgetting would mean I learned nothing. My mother took my hand. "What did you learn?" I smiled. That nobody should have to earn a place in their own family. Years after that, my brother and I took our children on a vacation together. We rented a beach house. On the first morning, Ethan stood beside the ocean with his kids. I stood beside mine. He looked at me. "Remember when we used to come here without you?" I smiled. "Yeah." "I still hate that." "I know." He looked at our children. "I'm glad we get to do it differently." "So am I." Our kids ran toward the waves. We followed them. And for a moment I looked around. There was Ethan. There were his children. There were mine. There was laughter. There was sunlight. There was the ocean. And nobody was being left behind. I thought about the 8-year-old girl who once believed she wasn't important enough to go. I wished I could travel back in time. I wished I could sit beside her. I wished I could take her hand and tell her, "You are not the problem. You are not less important. You are not forgotten. You are loved. And one day you'll understand that the people who failed to choose you don't get to decide your worth." Then I looked at my own children, and I knew the cycle had ended. Not because my childhood had changed. It hadn't. Not because my parents could erase the years. They couldn't. It ended because I chose something different. I chose to show up. I chose to listen. I chose to make memories with the people I loved. And most importantly, I chose never to make a child wonder whether they mattered. Because children may forget the hotel they stayed in. They may forget the restaurant. They may forget the souvenirs. They may even forget where the vacation happened. But they will remember who sat beside them. They will remember who held their hand. They will remember who looked at them and said, "We're going together." And sometimes, those 4 words can heal a wound that lasted a lifetime.